Welcome to this second video in our self-esteem series. I remember years ago when giving a lecture on self-esteem at Cambridge University to a crowd of health professionals, a nurse came up to me and told me that he always encourages his mental health patients to send love to themselves to help improve their self-esteem. Now, on the surface of it, this sounds like a perfectly pleasant idea, but when you think about it, what does it mean? And as we discussed last time, if you have low self-esteem, trying to think positive things about yourself can actually make you feel worse because it conflicts with how you feel at that time. And that's why our course 10 Steps to Solid Self-Esteem is based on research and my 19 years experience helping people with self-esteem. So we avoid this sort of pitfall. So let's look at our first cartoon for today. So this guy doesn't really have a problem with low self-esteem, does he? Personal hygiene perhaps, but his self-image is fine if a little unrealistic. And I'm making a serious point here though. Comparing yourself to others is a dangerous way to try to assess your own self-worth. As Max Ehrmann writes in his beautiful poem Desiderata, if you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Great advice, of course, but how do we follow it? These days the problem is that you've never had so much opportunity to compare yourself to other people. People all over the world, every airbrushed model or hugely successful business person, every erudite actor and talented sports person, they're all on public display and it's easy to compare ourselves to them. It's a universal tendency to compare ourselves to other people, but one that we need to keep under control. So the point here is, as they say, is never compare your inside with someone else's outside. And since I'm in a quotations mood, here's one more from Albert Einstein. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it's stupid. Of course, these are all just words, but they contain some powerful messages, and taking a little time to reflect on them can make a difference. Okay, so now on to our cartoon on approval seeking. Okay, so here we have a vicious-looking mugger, who I think we can safely say is in the wrong in this situation, but the guy being mugged is worrying about whether the mugger likes him or not. So this cartoon is demonstrating how low self-esteem makes you, the way it makes you behave in relationships, whether it's at home or at work or in any interaction. You might find yourself thinking of what you need to do to make the other person like you more. Okay, that might be your main priority. This is why low self-esteem can lead to being bullied, because bullies instinctively sense when someone blames themselves more than other people. When I was delivering a bullying workshop in London, a woman was talking about how she always felt it was her fault, somehow that she was always being bullied. And she said something to me that I've never forgotten. She said, "You don't turn a lion into a vegetarian by throwing veggie burgers at it." And if you go through life just wanting people to like you, if that's your point of reference for everything, then life is going to be very hard. Like a lot of human behavior, constantly seeking approval is learnt behavior. I remember counseling a woman named Susan who was blighted by a need to seek approval. She felt terrible about describing her mother honestly to me because she was worried I'd think less of her for criticizing her mother. And the more we talked, the more it transpired that her mother had perhaps caused the approval-seeking problem that she had. As a child, unless Susan was how her mother wanted her to be at all times, affection was withdrawn from her. And in that way, Susan had been conditioned as a young girl to feel that approval was vital at all times, like oxygen. A colleague of Susan's had picked up on how desperate she was to seek approval and was using this to bully Susan and to manipulate her. So a behavior learned in childhood was affecting her decades later, not just in how she felt about herself, but in how others manipulated her and treated her. In the 10 Steps course, I talk much more about how, while it's true that the past shapes you, you do have the power to change the way it shaped you. And of course, the course uses hypnosis, which is one of the best ways to challenge unhealthy styles of thinking. That's how I helped Susan overcome her approval-seeking problem. After a few sessions, she told me, only half-jokingly, that she didn't give a damn whether I was pleased with her progress or not, at which point we knew she'd made plenty. Okay, and our final video for today is on emotional insecurity. So here we're seeing how low self-esteem makes you feel like things are unstable and out of control, like the novice tightrope walker in the cartoon. As you will have noticed, emotional insecurity can ruin relationships. It results in clinginess, not giving people space, suspicion and jealousy, and a wonderful side effect of raising your self-esteem is that your relationships improve too. In the course I talk about a client of mine with low self-esteem called Melissa, who told me that ever since she was a teenager, she'd never felt good enough for any of her boyfriends. Because she felt so worthless, she put up with a lot of shocking behavior from them. Even when she did date someone nice, Melissa would break up with them because she thought they were inevitably going to end things with her. She felt like they were too good for her. The reason why Melissa came to see me was because she was in a relationship with a very nice guy called Tom, but felt very fragile and told me she felt like she might break at any moment. Although Tom demonstrated his affection for her and gave her no reason to be insecure, she was always worried about the relationship. If he didn't respond immediately to her texts and calls, she'd panic and take it as a sign that he wasn't interested in her anymore and was going to break up with her. Fortunately, we worked together to help her raise her self-esteem so that she wasn't so emotionally insecure. And I'm pleased to say that when we were done, although she worried less, her relationship was much stronger. Okay, so you'll remember how earlier I talked about how low self-esteem is really down to anxiety. And of course, anxiety is what makes you feel emotionally insecure. Once you see how to live without that level of anxiety, then your emotions become naturally much more stable. And learning how to deal with this anxiety as part of the 10 Steps course, it's a very important part, in fact.